What if everything you thought you knew about royal titles was quietly rewritten in a single sentence no one paid attention to? And what if that sentence was almost erased the moment power changed hands? Because buried deep inside a bland 1999 palace statement was a promise so explosive, so fragile, that it sat like a ticking time bomb for over 2 decades. And when the moment finally came, it nearly shattered the royal family from the inside out.
My ministers are committed to working with Parliament, the devolved administrations, business and others to build the widest possible consensus on the country's future outside the European Union.
It sounds unbelievable at first. A secret hidden in plain sight, not whispered in corridors, not leaked to tabloids, but printed, officially, quietly, and then forgotten. Or maybe not forgotten, ignored. Because on June 19th, 1999, while cameras focused on the soft, understated wedding of Prince Edward and Sophie Rees-Jones, something far more powerful was slipping under the radar. No grand spectacle. No royal fireworks. Just a modest ceremony at Windsor. And yet, behind the calm, behind the simplicity, a decision was made that would echo for decades. A line in a press release, a line most people skimmed past. But that line, it carried a promise from the Queen herself, backed by Prince Philip, and crucially agreed by Prince Charles. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. That promise said Edward would one day become the Duke of Edinburgh. Not maybe, not possibly, but clearly, officially agreed. It was there, written, signed off, locked in royal history. So why does it feel like no one treated it that way? Why did it sit there unnoticed like a sealed envelope no one dared to open? Because the moment Edward walked out of that chapel, he didn't become a duke. He became something else, something smaller, the Earl of Wessex, a title so obscure, so strange it hadn't been properly used in centuries. Critics even mocked it, said it wasn't even real in a modern sense. So why would a royal prince accept that? Why would he step away from tradition, from expectation, from power? The explanation sounds almost too casual to be real. A movie, a single Hollywood film influencing a royal decision. Edward liked the sound of Wessex after hearing it in Shakespeare in Love. That's what they said. That's what was reported. But look closer. Because that lesser title wasn't a downgrade, it was a delay, a placeholder, a quiet agreement that something bigger was coming, something reserved, something promised. And that's where the tension begins to build. Because promises inside the royal family aren't just emotional, they're constitutional puzzles. They don't move freely, they don't pass like heirlooms, they get tracked, redirected, complicated. Prince Philip didn't just want Edward to have the title, he chose him, personally, directly, no ceremony, no formalities, just a conversation, sharp, decisive, almost abrupt, a father making his intentions clear. And Sophie's reaction? Stunned. Not delighted, not celebratory, stunned, because even they understood the weight behind it. This wasn't a gift. It was a future arrangement, one that depended on timing, power shifts, and one crucial figure, Charles. Because here's the twist no one fully grasped at the time. Philip couldn't just give the title away. When he died, it wouldn't go straight to Edward. It would go to Charles. Automatically, legally, inevitably. And that's where everything becomes dangerous. Because once Charles held it, everything changed. The title didn't belong to tradition anymore. It belonged to choice. His choice. He could honor the promise or erase it completely, and no one could stop him. Not the Queen, not the public, not even the memory of his father. And suddenly that quiet sentence from 1999 didn't look so secure anymore. It looked fragile, exposed, at risk of being rewritten by silence. And when Philip died in 2021, the clock started ticking. Slowly at first, subtly, but then the whispers began. Reports, leaks, suggestions that Charles wasn't planning to pass the title to Edward after all, that he might keep it, redirect it, even bury it. And notice how it was never clearly denied, just vague responses, carefully chosen words, no final decisions, speculation, the kind of language that doesn't calm a situation, it feeds it. Because if everything was fine, why not say it clearly? And now the questions start stacking up. Was this about tradition or something deeper? Was it about strategy or something more personal? Because behind royal protocol, there are always relationships, old tensions, quiet rivalries. And the truth is, Edward wasn't always the golden son. He had his missteps, his failures, his controversies. And Charles, he had his own history with both his father and his brother, a complicated past, a dynamic that never fully settled. So when the power shifted, when Charles became the one holding the decision, was this just a matter of timing, or was it something more calculated? Because for over 2 years, nothing happened. No announcement, no confirmation, just silence. silence, heavy, deliberate silence, the kind that makes you wonder if the promise was already breaking behind closed doors. And the longer it stretched, the more it started to feel intentional, like something was being weighed, measured, possibly even reshaped. And that's when the story stops being about a title and starts becoming about control. Because what looked like hesitation, what looked like indecision, was actually something far more calculated. The silence wasn't empty, it was loaded. Every month that passed after 2021 felt like another layer of doubt pressing down on that 1999 promise. Like the royal family itself was testing how long the world would remember or forget what had once been written so clearly. And the longer Charles waited, the more the narrative began to shift. It stopped being about honoring a dying father's wish and started looking like a quiet redefinition of legacy. Because here's the part that makes everything feel almost surgical. While the public speculated about family tension, insiders were whispering about something else entirely. Politics. Not family politics. National politics. Scotland. Independence. Power beyond the palace walls. Suddenly, the Duke of Edinburgh title wasn't just a sentimental inheritance, it was a symbol. Edinburgh isn't just a name, it's a capital, a heartbeat of Scottish identity. And giving that title to Edward, a prince steadily sliding down the line of succession, could be interpreted in ways the palace couldn't control. It could look like England diminishing Scotland's importance, like handing its capital's identity to a minor royal. And in a time when the idea of Scottish independence was still alive, still volatile, still unpredictable, that was a risk, a serious one. So now the delay doesn't look emotional anymore. It looks strategic, like a chess move being held back until the board settled. And then something changed, quietly, almost suddenly. February 2023, Nicola Sturgeon steps down. The temperature around Scottish independence cools at least enough. And just weeks later, the announcement finally arrives. Not randomly, not casually, but on a very specific day. March 10th, 2023. Prince Edward's 59th birthday. And just like that, after years of silence, after decades of waiting, the title is granted. Official. Final. Public. The Duke of Edinburgh. It happened so cleanly, so neatly, it almost feels like the end of the story. But it isn't, because buried inside that announcement is another detail, another line, another quiet clause that changes everything again. For his lifetime, just 4 words. Easy to miss, easy to underestimate, but those words rewrite the entire meaning of the title. Because this isn't the same Duke of Edinburgh that Philip held. This isn't a legacy that passes down through generations. It's temporary, personal, limited. When Edward dies, the title doesn't move forward. It disappears. Back to the crown. Waiting. Reset. As if it never fully belonged to him in the first place. And suddenly the promise from 1999 feels altered, fulfilled on the surface, but reshaped underneath. Because think about what this does. Charles honors his parents. Publicly. Safely. He avoids the backlash, keeps the peace, but at the same time, he keeps control. The title doesn't leave his branch of the family permanently, it circles back. And eventually, it lands in the hands of the next king, Prince William. And from there, another decision waits. Another moment of power, another opportunity to redefine the legacy all over again. Maybe it goes to Prince Louis, maybe it doesn't. Maybe the title vanishes entirely. The point is, nothing is fixed. Nothing is guaranteed. And that's what makes this story feel unfinished. Because Edward finally gets what was promised, but only for as long as he lives. A reward, a recognition, but also a boundary. And if you look at his journey, it almost feels like a long, complicated redemption arc. The prince who struggled to find his place, who faced embarrassment, criticism, even ridicule. The Royal Marines episode, the failed production company, the scandal that strained his relationship with his own brother, each moment chipping away at his standing, each mistake quietly remembered. But then, slowly, carefully, he rebuilt, stepped back into royal duties, stayed out of controversy, became dependable, invisible in the best possible way. And by the time the monarchy needed stability, he was there. So when the title finally comes, it feels earned, hard-earned. But even that victory carries a shadow, because it's not permanent, it's not generational. It's almost like being handed a crown that you already know will be taken back. And maybe that's the most revealing part of all. Not the delay, not the politics, not even the family tension, but the way the final decision was crafted so precisely that everyone gets something and no one gets everything. Queen Elizabeth's promise is technically fulfilled. Prince Philip's wish is respected. Edward receives the honor he waited for. Charles maintains control over the future, and William inherits the power to decide what comes next. It's a perfect royal compromise, balanced, calculated, quietly brilliant, and yet slightly unsettling, because it shows just how flexible these traditions really are, how something that looks ancient and fixed can be reshaped behind closed doors with a few carefully chosen words. And that brings everything back to where it started, that single line in 1999, that promise hidden in plain sight. It wasn't ignored. It was managed, controlled, delayed, and ultimately rewritten just enough to fit a new reality. The palace didn't lie, it just didn't tell the full story. It never does. It leaves pieces scattered, statements, timing, silences, and waits to see who connects them. And now there's one final question hanging in the air. When Edward is gone, when that title slips back into the crown, what happens then? Does William revive it? Does he pass it to his own son? Or does he quietly let it fade away, ending the cycle completely? Because if this story has proven anything, it's that nothing in the royal family is ever as simple as it seems. Not even a promise written in black and white.